Waterfront Theatre School, or college as we now call it, was actually established in 1978, but under a different name. It was the Waverley Arts Centre when Keith and I established it in Johannesburg. Nobody knew what Waverley was all about. It was between Galloway and Sainsbury. We thought it was very clever, but nobody else seemed to pick that up except us. And we were actually forced into running a school by the government because we didn't intend to do that at all. We came over as performers, and the government said, well, we're not going to allow you to stay in South Africa unless you open a school, because we both had qualifications which we were keeping very carefully hidden. And so we did. We opened actually in a moth hall in Johannesburg and taught a couple of people, and like Topsy, it just growed and it became huge. So what started off as a performing career, which was up there, and the school, and an embryonic theatre, which was down here, over the period of years did that. And the theatre became a natural extension of the training programme. My husband Keith Galloway always had a theatre of some sorts that he worked in to give the students as much experience as possible, because of course South Africa doesn't have a repertory system, so it was to try to bridge that gap between college and going out into the big wide world. So we've always done this in some form or another, and after my husband passed away, I wanted to do something that was going to honour his memory and the contribution to the college, which of course was massive. And he always wanted to create this space, and for some reason we didn't do it. So I kind of made it my mission with Paul to then create this space and call it the Galloway, and it's been restored back to its 1901 original origins, and we're very proud of it, and I'm glad it's going to be a legacy to Keith, because that's what he would have wanted. And now Paul's going to tell you what our aims and ambitions are for the space.
Well, part of the reason for creating a theatre space is because obviously for the past 30 years Delia has been involved in the training of students, and for the last 21 years I've been connected in some way, shape or form to this building. And we have increasingly noticed that in order to establish yourself within the performing arts industry, you have to be far more entrepreneurial than you needed to be in the past. People who are graduating into the industry are needing to create their own work in order to create their career opportunities, and they need platforms in order to showcase this work that they are creating. So our motivation for creating this space was because we noticed that within the market there was a very clear gap between people who were entering the industry and then more mainstream platforms within the industry. Keith had actually referred to it in the past as being a bridging company, that in some way we recognized the need for there to be a bridge for people to take from training into the more established industry. And one of the things that we feel very strongly about is that in order for our industry to be a robust industry, it needs to have various scales at which people can be performing. There needs to be an entry level, there needs to be an emerging artist level, there needs to be more established artists, and then there needs to be the mainstream commercial theatre venture. And in order for our industry to be flourishing, all of those aspects of the industry need to be thriving. And we've noticed that within our own city, we don't necessarily have a thriving fringe environment. And that's what we're wanting to bring to the city of Cape Town. We're wanting to work together with other theatres to say, let's create platforms that we can rotate, that we can create a circuit for artists to be able to give them the opportunity to firstly create work, showcase their work, and then if that work has legs or has the potential to go somewhere else, for us to try and foster and nurture the touring of those productions, not only from within this city but further out to the Western Cape, and then of course nationally. So what we're wanting to do here is to create a vibrant platform where people can create to a certain extent without risk, We are here to help support, to mentor, to provide feedback, and not only us but also for our audience. This is part of what we're wanting to do with audience development, to be able to create an audience that invests in the starting out of creativity and then works with it to develop it to a level that it can then go further afield.
Oh, the programme coming up, yes, we're doing really well. We're sort of booked through to May. We have a play opening on Wednesday called Bentley's Betties, and that's by an award-winning student called Grace Newton, who won the award for, well, I think let Paul tell you about that one first, because he's more involved with that than I am.
There is a new writing competition that was launched 2 years ago by the Mbewu Trust, which is a trust that has been set up for the development of South African arts. And the new writing competition is called the Scribe New Writing Competition, and each year it seeks to identify a play or writers who show potential within the framework of dramatic writing. In 2012, the play that won was a play by a young writer called Gabriella Pinto, and it was called Chickens. And then in its second year, the panel of judges couldn't reach an agreement in terms of which play was the winning play. And so a selection of 3 plays were made. One was called Old Dogs by Anton Kruger. The other one was Bentley's Betties by Grace Newton. And the third one was called Malebone by Loreko Mfolo. And these 3 plays were given staged readings, which were then facilitated by one of the judges who led a post-show discussion together with the audience in order to see how the writers could take the response of both the actors and the directors who'd been working on the script, together with the audience who had witnessed the performance of the script, and take that information and use it to develop their work further. And one of those plays was the Bentley's Betties, which was written by Grace Newton. So when we were looking to program, because part of what we're wanting to do is showcase emerging talent, we're also wanting to develop a new young audience, and the play that she's written is about 20-year-olds who are having to work not very far from here in restaurants in Somerset Road, and who are trying to make ends meet while move on with their lives while still working in the service industry. So we thought it was an incredibly relevant and resonant play with our audience, our target audience, but also with our artistic vision for this space. So the first play is that, Bentley's Betty by Grace Newton. This will be followed by a production called The Regulars, and this is a new musical theatre piece which was created by a group of young individuals who were trying to raise money for a lion sanctuary in Namibia, and they took this production up to Namibia to raise funds, and we have invited them back to the theatre space because, again, it's a piece that's incredibly resonant with our target audience. It's dealing with being 20 to 25 and living in the centre of Cape Town. We then follow that with a theatre and education project, and this is of the play Othello by William Shakespeare, because obviously this is a play that is studied within the national curriculum, and this is an abridged version of Othello, so it gives you the full narrative but in a slightly condensed script, and that is going to have 2 weeks of performances in the space. We then have a festival of devised work, and this festival of devised work is in response to Cape Town's Infecting the City project, which is an annual project where artists go into the city centre and do site-specific work across Cape Town for a period of 2 weeks. The response of the artists is to a particular thematic brief. So we are going to tie into that project by giving a brief to artists to create a whole range of different devised pieces, and that will then be showing in the last week of March. As we then move into the April holiday and into the Easter period, we're going to be showcasing a children's theatre production, and this is a production of Aesop's Fable, which was written by Keith Galloway and which will be directed by our theatre manager Dion Bischoff.